morning. Welcome back to Fat Guy in a Little Garage. It's ridiculously early in the morning. I told my boy I'd take him out fishing today. Well, that's what we're going to do here just a little bit. But I wanted to do a quick walk around to this little project that I've got here. What I've got here is a 2012 Chrysler 200. Not sure how many miles are on it, but car belongs to a friend of mine's grandson, and he broke down a few miles away, and turned out he ran the car out of gas. That's not that big of a deal. But she said that she drove the car home for him, and it scared her. She said that when she steps on the brakes, the car shakes violently and pulls really hard to the right. So I told her, bring the car over, we'll take a look at it, and that's what we're going to do. So these cars are notorious for things like ball joints and tie rod ends going bad. I'm not going to speculate that that's what the problem is, but we're going to take a look at this thing, go through it, see if we can figure out what's wrong with it. Okay, let's see what we're up against here. Get a jack thrown under this thing, and all right, I got it up in the air a little bit here, just enough to get the wheel off the ground. Oh, holy smokes. Okay, that's going to require a little bit closer look. I think I'm going to leave the wheel on it for just a moment here. We get up underneath it and see if we can get a closer look at what's going on here. Okay, now we're situated underneath the car here. I think what we got going on right here is this ball joint right here is no bueno. Definitely got a tremendous amount of play in that ball joint right there. Maybe a little bit better light on it here. Look right there. Shadows. Wiggle that back and forth. Just a tremendous amount of play in there. So that would explain why the car lurches to the right when you step on the brakes. Well, I know we've got a bad ball joint on this side. Well, tie rod end, I think, is okay. I think that's all in the ball joint. So I think before I tear this wheel off of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since I've already got a jack on the other side, I'm going to go over there and check that side out and see if we've got anything much the same over there. All right, we'll wiggle our way over here to the driver's side of this hot rod and see what we're up against here. The struts look like they're fairly new. Oh. So take a look in there, you know, you can see that play. That wheel should not move like that at all. So definitely needs a set of ball joints. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear the wheels off of it and just give everything a look over and see if anything's torn, broken, bent, rusted through, or just plain flat out abused. All right, let's get these peeled off here. Those lug nuts were a little more than finger tight. It's a little concerning. All right. Don't see any terrible wear in the tires. No, a little bit of feathering in here in the inside edges, but nothing to cry in your soup over. All right. Get in and take a look. What we got here? What are we working with? What's happening? shed a little light on the subject here. No. Brakes on this car don't look terribly old either. Well, brake hoses look pretty good. Sway bar links look good. Tie rod ends are good. Looks like it's got a new drive axle, and you can tell because of that nice bright shiny nut, which oh, get this wheel turned here a little bit. A little bit closer look in here at this ball joint. You're not going to be able to see much, but she is shot. Okay, so this little race car needs a set of ball joints. Control arm bushings back there look like they're in pretty decent shape. You look back here, these control arm bushings right here. What you want to look for is like cracking and just dryness, and that one actually looks pretty decent. So I think we'll leave those alone for today. Now, she had also mentioned that that there were some drivability concerns in the fact that she said that she couldn't get the car to go up over 60 miles an hour. Now, I'm not going to attempt to drive this car 60 miles an hour with those ball joints as bad as they are, so I'm going to have to touch base with her and let her know that the suspension problems are going to have to be fixed before we worry too much about the engine. Now, I am going to look around in here a little bit. It does have a check engine light on, so I'm going to scan that, find out what's wrong there, why the check engine light is on. And the ABS light is on as well. I'm not sure what that could possibly be, but when I was pulling the car in, I felt the ABS pumping the brakes. So I believe what might be going on is there might be a problem with one of the tone rings on one of the four wheels, thinking that the wheels are locking up and it's activating the ABS when it's not supposed to. Now, if this car's got traction control, which I'm not 100% certain if it does or not, if the car's got traction control, it can actually depower the engine and give her the sensation that the car's not producing power because it's not. It deactivates cylinders and depowers the engine when it notices loss of traction, and that is detected by the wheel speed sensors, which could very well be the problem, but without digging in a little bit deeper, I won't know for absolute certain, so it's hard to speculate. So let's just take a quick peek around inside under the hood and see if there's anything weird going on. All right. What we got here is a Chrysler engine, run-of-the-mill 2.4 liter dual overhead cam, naturally aspirated. Again, nothing to write home to mom about, but this is a pretty reliable engine, and they aren't terribly prone to too many problems that I'm aware of. I think the most I ever see go wrong with these things is the crank position sensors go bad in them and they won't start. So let's get this oil checked and see what's happening in here. Oh, okay. Not a drop of oil on the stick. That is not good. I mean, not even a drop. Which is odd. This engine wasn't making any noise at all. Yeah. Okay. I take back what I said earlier about where we were going to start. think we're going to start by changing the oil in this thing, or at least adding. So, well, that pretty much settles that for the moment. It must be burning it, because when I was under it, I didn't see any puddles under it or any major leaks. So, okay, let's go give her a call and see what she wants to do. You know, just out of curiosity, let's see if this thing's got an oil change sticker in it. See how far overdue he is. Let's flip you around. All right. Car, focus, is sitting at 190,182 miles. He was due for an oil change at 177,707. So, if my math is right, this car is 13,000 miles overdue for an oil change. That would explain some things. Good morning. Welcome back. Been a few days. Finally got the okay to tear into this car, get it fixed up for him, and hopefully it's not damaged beyond repair. First thing I'm going to do is change the oil in this thing to make sure that the engine is going to be okay before I bother with the suspension work. If the engine turns out to be okay, then we're going to put a set of ball joints on it and that left front wheel bearing to get the ABS to stop acting up. Let's get the oil out of this thing and see how much it's actually got in it. Ooh. Oh, whoever put that on there. Not somebody I want to arm wrestle with. Let's see. Well, it's got oil in it at least. And turn this sideways here. Get this filter off of here. Well, man about destroyed the drain plug putting it in, but didn't bother to tighten the filter. Must have wore himself out tightening the drain plug. Yeah, this thing might have had a quart and a half of oil in it. Oh, not good. I don't know if I doing it very well here, but the oil doesn't look too terrible. I don't see any metallic particles in it, so that's a good sign. But I can tell you one thing for sure, that oil is old and broke down. Yeah. Now, right now I'm thinking this kid got pretty lucky. Now you want to take this O-ring here, get a little bit of used oil off of the oil filter housing and schmooze that on around there and get that nice and lubricated so that it doesn't, it'll tighten up properly and reduces the chances of the filter pretty much welding itself to the filter adapter. Once she makes contact, go about 3/4 of a turn, 1 full turn, snug her up. That's all you need to do. You don't need to murder them. I think I'm going to let this set and drain for a few minutes just to make sure I get all of this out of here that I can. There's no point in you sitting here watching all of that, so I think we'll take a break and find something to do. All right. Got the oil drained out of it. Now, time to put in some new lifeblood here. Get the oil cap off of here. I can't find funnel that'll fit down in this because it's really shallow. So we're going to test my pouring abilities. Get it off of there. And of course, they put the biggest spout they could possibly find on the end of this jug. So let's see how many of the... Yeah, it's not going to work. I need a funnel. You know, just to ensure that we make the biggest mess possible, I found the most ridiculous funnel I had in the shop because, you know, I can't find my good one. So let's get this in there. I don't think it could possibly flow in there any slower than it is. Get this drained down a little bit further so that it's not so awkward. Set that off to the side. Now, let's see if I can hit that hole. Nah, we're only going to dump about half a quart on the ground. It'll be fine. There we go. Okay. Not too bad for government work. And clean that up a little bit there. Give it a little spritz there, clean up that residue. Make it look brand new. Yeah. That'll work. Okay. Right now it should show just a smidge over full because it hasn't filled the filter yet. And maybe just a smidge shy. I got another half a quart laying down here somewhere. Yeah. Yep. Up. Just a little shy. That's okay. We'll throw another half a quart in it. Get this thing fired up, shall we? All right, got another quart put in it and got it up to snuff. Let's see if this thing will fire up. Oh, it sounds so much better. Still got a little exhaust leak that I'm going to look at, but we're not going to fret about that too much right at the moment. But the rattling noises are gone, so I'm happy. Hitting on all 4 cylinders. The only light on the dash right now is a tire pressure light, and it's showing that the right rear tire is a little low. So we'll monkey with that later. I'll make sure that they're all up and set to where they're supposed to be. So okay. The oil change seems to have been successful. I didn't have too many worries that it wouldn't, but you never know. So, change of oil, got it up to snuff. Engine sounds okay. Now I feel a little bit more confident about moving on and actually putting the time and effort and this woman's money into this kid's car. So, okay, I went ahead off camera and jacked this thing up, took the front tires off of it, or this side anyway. So The ball joint on these things is pressed into the knuckle, not the control arm, like some cars are. So to get the ball joint out of this, the steering knuckle actually has to be removed. So that means I got to take the brakes off, rotor, axle nut. This side gets a wheel bearing anyway, so all of this is going to have to be torn apart anyhow. So let's get after it. Let's make some noise. You want to make sure that that axle will push in, because if it's stuck in the hub of the wheel bearing, it'd be pretty challenging to get the rest of it apart. This one slid pretty easily because this axle looks like it's been replaced recently. So why it is it's got all these new parts in it and nobody caught these bad ball joints is beyond me, but it is what it is. So go ahead and turn this way. Now I'm not going to take the caliper and bracket and brake pads all apart on this. There's two bolts back here that hold the brake caliper to the steering knuckle. I'm just going to take those two bolts off, take this off, and hang it off to the side. Got to grab a wire to hang that with, so give me just a second. I couldn't find a piece of wire, but a bungee cord works just as well. Get these two knuckle bolts off of here. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to need a bigger gun. Here. This old girl here's got a little bit bigger attitude, I think. Oh, yeah. Big Bertha's got all the muscle. All right. Now, just want to stick this in here and spread that brake caliper apart just a little bit. There we go. Just enough that the brake pads will loosen their bite on the rotor. Of course, it doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. Now it should slip right off. Like so. There we go. And keep that brake caliper from hanging by its hose. So now, got to get 4 bolts out of here that hold the wheel bearing in. The ABS wire probably should be taken out of there to keep from damaging it. So let's go ahead and turn this back the other way. There we go. All right. It's a little dark back here, but there's a 10mm bolt that holds that wheel speed sensor into the knuckle. So we'll need to get that out of there. Broke out my handy dandy forehead light here. Right here, you'll see 10mm bolt. This is the wheel speed sensor. It's got a magnet on the end of it, and there's a tone wheel on the back side of this wheel bearing that has 360 little pieces of metal in it that magnet reacts to, and it creates an AC voltage that reads the wheel speed to the ABS module. I need to get that out of the way to make sure that I don't damage it, and it's got to come off to get the steering knuckle off anyway. So let's get that thing out of the way, shall we? Okay, I'm gonna give her a little shot of penetrating lube. And this is where, one of those little places where even if you're not a religious person, you might want to say a little prayer. Is you break this little bugger, it can get expensive and it can do it quick. You just want to start off with little wiggles. You get a bite on it. There we go. All right, she's starting to wiggle now. Just Twist and pull, twist and pull. Yeah, she's going to come out of there for us. Good. All right, slid right out. All right, this is what I was talking about. This is a magnet. And it sticks. That metal, and as that little metal tone ring comes around here, it excites this, and it sends an AC signal up to the ABS module and tells the computer how fast this wheel is spinning. And when that little tone wheel back there gets chips in it, which I'll show you when I get this apart, it starts throwing an erratic signal because some of those little strips of metal that excite that magnet are missing. These aren't coming out as rough as I thought they were going to. Thankfully, although abused, this car is not terribly rusty. Is being here in Illinois in the rock hard center of the Rust Belt, these wheel bearings can sometimes be a little challenging to get out. There we go. This one's going to be a little bit more fighty. We'll just shoot a little lube on them. Won't hurt a thing. Make them a little less squawky coming out. All right. Ooh. Wouldn't have been too much longer. That would have put up a hell of a fight. All right, I can turn this knuckle back the other way and get the other two bolts off of there. Give myself a little bit of leverage here. All right, got those out of there. Wow. Okay. All right, well, here. We got the 4 bolts that hold this wheel bearing assembly in there. And you can see that's pretty crusty. Now, ideally, what I would do is I'd take an air hammer and I'd put it right here on this flange and down here on this flange, and I would rock that back and forth to break that rust free until I was able to wiggle it out. Now, that having been said, I don't have an air compressor here in the shop yet, or the garage, mainly because it's a very small garage, and an air compressor would just take up a tremendous amount of room that I don't have. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way with brute force and anger. And what we'll do is we'll strike the back side of this hub on either side with a big hammer and hope it gives up before I do. BFH acquired. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the back side of this hub a couple times over here. And I'll get up and I'll turn the wheel and I'll smack it a couple times in the backside there in hopes that it will shake loose from the steering knuckle and just slide right off. Right. So let's make some noise. Okay. First couple of whacks separated pretty nicely. Oh, this isn't going to be as bad as I thought. Let's get this turned the other way. Give it a couple of licks the opposite direction. See what we can do about getting that wheel bearing on out of there. Yeah, I don't think this is going to fight as hard as I had originally thought it was going to. Yeah, look at that. Slipped right on out. Okay, now let me show you this. This is that metallic magnet I was telling you about. And you see here, it's got sections of it missing. Well, as that tone ring sits through the knuckle right here and protrudes through that little hole right there and sits behind that magnet, or behind that steel there. And that, you know, when that magnetic material chips off like that, it starts throwing an erratic wheel speed signal and turns on the check engine, or the ABS light, and in this particular case the traction control light as well. And it was actually causing the car to depower while driving down the road because it was seeing that missing wheel signal and triggering the traction control, thereby causing her not to be able to accelerate on the highway, or it was depowering itself and just losing speed altogether. So that's definitely what's going on with that. So this is definitely garbage. And it's got this little shim that sits behind it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this steering knuckle off of here and replace this lower ball joint. So in order to do that, we've got to take these two bolts out here that hold the strut to the knuckle, the nut that holds the outer tie rod end of the knuckle, and then obviously the ball joint nut. And then once we get that loose, we'll smack that a couple of times and that'll pop right out of there. And then we can just pull this knuckle off here and we'll take it over to the other side of the shop and I'll show you the process for pressing out and pressing back in a new wheel bearing. All right, need a bigger hammer too. All right. Oh, one shot and done. Popped right out of the ball joint. See that? We'll aim it down here just a smidge. There we go. And that just popped right out of that lower control arm there. Now, get that swung around here. Get these two 21s off of there. And then take the knuckle off. Head on over to the other side. Here, the steering knuckle. The ball joint is pressed in there. It has to be pressed out and a new one pressed back in its place. No, it's not a difficult procedure. A little bit time consuming, and there's a special tool involved called a ball joint press. So we're gonna take this to the other side of the car where I got a little bit more room to move around, break out the ball joint press, and get that new ball joint put in there. Now I got the knuckle off of it, set over here, the other side where I can work a little bit easier. We're gonna press this ball joint out of here. It sits down inside the little hole right here in the bottom of the steering knuckle. So get the ball joint press set up here. Now the sleeve that I have for this isn't quite long enough to keep from making contact with that stud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack up both of these adapter cups, press the ball joint out that way. But first, there's a snap ring that holds this thing in there, and there's an access slot through this hole right here. Just need to take a little screwdriver or a punch and drive that out of there just enough that you can flip it over, grab a hold of it with a screwdriver or a small pry bar, and wiggle it on out of there. Of course, this one wants to fight. There we go. Brute force and tenacity always wins. There's a little snap ring that holds it in there. So now we'll get the ball joint press cup set in there like so. Set the ball joint press over top of it like that to where the top of it sits on the top of that ball joint. Get that set inside there like so. And they say you're not supposed to use an impact gun on these, but I don't like to be told what to do. So, let's go. There we go. Take that all apart. And the ball joint slid right out. Now I just take a little hammer and do a couple love taps down in there. Like, oh, like that. Slipped right out. And there you go. She's all ready for the new ball joint to go back in. And boy, is this one crusty. Okay, got the new ball joints out of the box. Get these bad boys pressed back in here. Now, I may have to use a large socket to press those in because these sleeves aren't quite long enough. Now that might be okay to press it back in. Let's see what we got working with here. All right. And then, yeah, that's not going to work. Joint sleeves are not going to allow this to happen. So, I got that pressed in just a little bit, and that's all the further it'll go. But I've still got this, 3/8 of an inch gap that I've got to close up. So, I'm going to go a little bit more unconventional here and just use brute force. And this sleeve here with this cap, and then I'm just going to pound that down into place with a hammer instead of using the ball joint press. I'm not a big fan of doing it this way, but you know, it's more labor intensive, and you know, it's not really ideal to be beating on a tool that isn't necessarily designed for it, but it is what it is today. All right. Got her closing up there. Yeah, that's moving down pretty good. Get that squared up a little bit more there. A couple more good swats and this will be home. All right. There you go. All pressed into place. Like I said, it's not the ideal way to do it, but it works in a pinch. And then pull our snap ring out. We have two different snap rings. It's got one that goes all the way around it and one that just snaps over it. It had the snap over style in it, so we'll put that back in there, and you just slide that over it like that on that little channel that's down in the top of that ball joint, and just give her a little taparoo there until it seats down into place. And bada bing, ball joints installed. So while I've got this apart, I've cleaned this out here. I'm going to go ahead and put the new hub assembly in it while I'm at it, while everything's out of the way. Now here's that tone ring that I was telling you about. Now this one here is not all chipped up like that other one was. So this one here is going to read the wheel speed like it's supposed to. Just set it down in there like so. Line up the bolt holes, flip it over, bolts back in it. You want to kind of run these in slow in a crisscross pattern to draw that into the knuckle evenly. All right, one steering knuckle ready for reassembly. Let's go get this sucker put back in the car. All right, back over here on the left side of this thing with our freshly rebuilt steering knuckle assembly. We just got to get her put back together. So the first thing you want to do is get this lifted up out of the way. Kind of, you have to finagle this stuff as you go in, and you want to put this ball joint stud down in that hole first and line up this axle with the backside of the steering knuckle at the same time. And you want to kind of wiggle and twist until the splines in there line up, and then that's set into place for you. And just get your nut started on there. I'm going to go ahead and get that tightened up right off the bat. And then we can put the steering knuckle back to the strut. You want to make sure that that's drawn up in there nice and tight. So you take this strut, turn it straight. Just leaned and finagled through here. And you'll pick this straight up like that, and line it up with that upper strut hole. Get your second one put in here. I'm going to give it just a little tap here to set those teeth into it, the knuckle. That will not only help me make sure that this is lined up pretty close to where it was at, but when I go to tighten these up, the bolts won't want to spin quite as easily. And we can go ahead and run those down tight. Make sure that they're snug, because this is where the camber is adjusted. When you take it in for wheel alignment, when this is all said and done, they'll loosen this up and they'll adjust the camber in and out depending on where it needs to go. And you want to make sure that it's tight, because you don't want it moving, flopping around when you're getting it to the alignment shop. Now you want to put your axle nut back on there and get that drawn down tight. All right. Perfect. Get the heat shield back on. I'm sorry, dust shield. All three of those lined up. This car came apart remarkably well, and it wasn't bad putting it back together either. So I'll take that win anytime I can get it. No broken bolts, No stripped heads. Old buggy cooperated pretty decent. Now, I'm going to take this wheel speed sensor, put it back in. And it slid right back into its hole, so that's good. That's the part that surprised me the most. It's that plastic sensor. They love to stick inside those holes, and it ain't hard to break one. I broke a lot of them over the years. All right, now this brake rotor back on here. And I'm gonna run one of these wheel nuts down over the top of it to kind of hold it still. And get it set on the hub face properly so that the brake pads don't fight me too much going back on. And get the bungee cord out of the way here. Now, one thing you want to be really careful of, and I see this all the time. When you put this back on, you don't want to have this hose coiled, or what we call pigtailed, when it goes back on, because when you turn the wheels and it pulls that hose out, it'll actually pinch it shut and cause the brakes to hang up, and can actually damage and break the inside of that hose. And then you've got all kinds of new problems with the brakes not working, or hanging up, or dragging when you're driving down the road, or worst case yet, the hose breaking and losing brakes altogether. So you just want to make sure that that caliper is oriented properly when you put it back on, because you can twist that and put the caliper on and everything will work just fine until it doesn't. So very important that you make sure that that hose isn't kinked or pigtailed. And let's get these tightened down now. All right. And get this tie rod end put back on now. Put run the nut down on it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the wheel this way toward me so I can line up the hole to that castle nut. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. Okay, what I was talking about. Get you in here for a second. Inside here, you look real close and get the shadowing down. Look inside there in that threaded part, you can see that hole in it. Well, that castle nut needs to line up with that hole so you can put that cotter pin back in. Cotter pin's kind of important to go back in there because it keeps that nut from backing out. And the tie rod end from coming loose. And having a problem losing your steering. So, all right, there we are. This side's all put back together, ready for the wheel to go back on it. And I just got to go over to the other side. The other side, the wheel bearing is okay over there. So I'm not going to replace the wheel bearing on the passenger side. I'm just going to put the ball joint in it. The tie rod ends in this car are new. Sway bar links are new. That drive shaft is new. So I'm not going to worry about anything to do with the tie rod ends or the sway bar links or anything. Just the ball joints were really loose All that play is now gone. So get that other ball joint put on here. This car will be safe to drive again, and we can get this young man back on the road. All right, got the left front of this thing put back together. All the play's gone out of it. Now I just need to get over here to the passenger side, get it taken apart, and replace the ball joint on that steering knuckle. Just going to go to work here, get this thing taken care of, and get it put back together. See, I didn't want to operate myself. I'm going to break down here. You see, that's not taking up, just sitting on the side there. So what I gotta do is I gotta get way up, push it on, put the pressure on now to get that wedge. Oh, my side, tighten a little more so that not tighten that side won't spin. So I'm going to go jack. Sit here. We'll go on jack, we're on work. Here we go. Now I find something here. Just in there too. Take it back. Here we go. Okay. These won't fit. I can put pressure on it. We'll go close, I can see it's in there. No, I got it. All right. There we go. There. There. Now she's in. Put the dog back together. Okay. Okay, got the car all stabbed back together. All the lights are out on the dash. Oil is changed. Brakes are howling because it's been sitting out here in the rain for 2 days. Let's take this thing for a spin, see what happens. Alright, cruising through town. Not too shabby. Steering wheel's a little off center, so it's going to need an alignment, but that's not a big deal. No warning lights on in the dash. Shaking is gone. Drives down the road pretty smooth. I think we'll count this as a win today. I sure do appreciate you tuning in and watching my shenanigans, and sure would appreciate a like and subscribe. I'd like to see you come back for more torture. I thank you very much, and until next time, we'll see you then.